My name is Vince Sciotto. I head up Evolving AI. We are a managed service provider for AI services primarily, where our focus is really on deploying AI and monitoring and maintaining it for our customers and going through and helping them from a process optimization perspective. Today, we'll be discussing the topic of exploring the critical challenges in managing AI beyond the initial deployment. We have, I feel, a moral obligation to the industry. We should all help each other. I feel we have a moral obligation to be able to communicate some of the things that we're seeing out there. A lot of times there's a whole marketing layer to things where folks are telling us what they want us what they want us to buy. But I feel that as people that operate within the industry, that need to are responsible to ensure that the rubber hits the road. We have an obligation to one another to help communicate things that we're seeing and issues that we come across so we can better help ourselves. So this webinar is really meant to be an informative webinar. It's not meant to be salesy by any means. Obviously, we talk about some things that we have capability in, but that's really not the purpose. We'll talk about one of the tools that we've got that we leverage as well. Again, that's from an awareness perspective, really not trying to sell us on any of that. Really wanted to talk through some of the things that we're seeing in the industry and how that's going. So the growing adoption of AI, it is everywhere. It's across industries, it's across different business units within organizations. There are tons of use cases that exist just from a citizen development perspective alone, where people will deploy tidbits of automation, things freeware that they get, or they'll be empowered to deploy some RPA, code to be able to help themselves out, or they'll use, LLM. They'll start getting interacting with Chat GPT and things of that nature. Bottom line is that there is a huge impact in every industry and a huge potential from an efficiency and effectiveness perspective that AI brings to the table. Efficiency meaning we can do things faster, effectiveness meaning we can get the results, but also there's an opportunity to remove human error. So there's a huge benefit and a lot of focus from not just a leadership perspective, but also from the people that actually have to deliver on these tasks to try to see how they can do their job, more efficiently and effectively, how it can help them out. So the business impact really helps that E&E helps make the right decision. We've come a long way when it comes to cognitive capability, right? Where we're trying to interpret what the ask is so that we can make a proper decision. So that decision-making capability that AI now brings to the table is huge. And we've got a direct impact on customer experience. So from, agentic chatbots that are interacting with our customers to the processes that we put in place to make the transaction more efficient, more effective. There's a lot of different things now that are impacting the customer directly. Has a huge impact on availability of services or availability of product, and that availability has a direct objective impact on CSAT. And so AI is being leveraged a lot more from that perspective because we want to make our clients happier so they can come back and transact with us more. And the more we've got out there, the more advancements we've got in capabilities that we've got, the more innovation takes place. Different people have different ideas, and that's great. But there's also a lot of tech that's on its way that is going to be able to really help drive a lot of advancements. A lot of the focus today in the industry, right, we all know is machine learning, the NLP stuff, natural language, as we're interacting with phone systems and integrating with the chat and integrating with SMS and integrating with the agents who ultimately transact or oversee the transaction with the humans. The large language models that are out there are huge. They are, I think, so when I talk to executives, and I ask them, I say, so, please define AI for me. And the first thing a lot of them go to is ChatGPT. It becomes synonymous with, the perception of what AI is. and it's got a huge role to play. And we'll talk about some of the risks around that in the subsequent slide. And we've got computer vision helping from a manufacturing perspective, things of that nature, but also RPA. RPA is still the workhorse when it comes to automation and executing on tasks, and it continues to make advancements as it integrates different capabilities and advancements in other areas to be able to come to the right decision at the right time and then be given the marching orders to go through and actually execute what they need to do. The future is going to continue to grow in adoption. So as different tech comes out there, as different generations start hitting the workforce, we're going to start seeing a lot more adoption and less reticence to or fear as it pertains to adopting AI in our daily lives. And so we're going to see a lot more of that from an industry perspective. And the trends that we're seeing right now is really in that Gen AI space. Quantum AI is huge. I think of all the possibilities that are going to come up when we're talking about, what does superposition within quantum mean to the speed of our transactions and decision making? What does entanglement mean in quantum as it pertains to the way in which you communicate? I think the way in which we transfer data is going to change completely. And AI is also playing a huge role in cybersecurity. We're going to talk about what the industry is focused on and where I see some of the pitfalls and what we need to focus on specifically on AI and cyber in some subsequent slides. So there's risks. There's a lot of risks, and I think putting our head in the sand and not calling out those risks, I think is not the right thing to do. I think we need to call them out, not to propagate fear, but to realize that these are things that we need to address. Operationally, when we go in and we design an AI solution and we deploy it, there is a baseline of how it was designed to perform and how it can degrade over time. Not keeping an eye on that, not monitoring that is a huge risk, because what ends up happening is the accuracy of the result and the actions that are dependent upon that are then put at risk. System failures, as we've got multiple systems that we interact with, whether they're legacy systems or some newer SaaS technology. We become dependent on the optimal performance of this AI, and when it's not there, we suffer. So I think of situations where we've integrated API into OpenAI for ChatGPT, and it goes down. Well, what does that mean to the people that are depending on this operationally to be able to execute? And what does that mean to their customers from an availability perspective? What does that mean to the ROI that was originally, considered? And if there's a requirement from a compliance perspective for us to be able to perform, to maintain compliance when things are down, then we're no longer compliant, and we're going to depend on a human to go in to bypass that work, and it becomes a big mess. AI sprawl is also huge. We've got a lot of different technology, yes. We've also got a lot of different actors within an organization, whether it be a business unit, right, or even sometimes within individual teams, or if we think of multinational organizations, there's all these different initiatives that are taking place. And so you've got all these instances of AI that exist in an organization. And that's a huge risk because it needs to be monitored, it needs to be maintained, it needs to be governed. There's a lot to a lot of impact that can potentially have. If I think of just a simple, situation in an enterprise environment where we've got RPA that's managing different automation tasks within different business units, and we've got someone that's interacting with an LLM for a large language model for any type of chat bot, and we've integrated into phone systems from a natural language. And then we've also got all of a sudden a Tesla bot that's walking around the warehouse picking different things. There's different technology that are doing different things that need to be monitored. A, for performance, are they doing what they were intended to do? But B, are they failing in any way, and do they represent some type of risk from a security perspective. And so security is another huge risk. There is a lot of data that we interact with when we're talking about AI. Those data points, gaining access to that is huge for a hacker. And so attackers have shifted, many of them, from trying to phish humans to gain access into an environment to trying to phish and interact with AI in a company's organization to try to get information or insight as to how, I don't know, emails are structured, for example, so that they can use that to phish a human, or they'll look for a vulnerability because a lot of times the AI that's deployed is not monitored as closely as it should be, and so it becomes this huge vulnerability for businesses, and attackers are just all over it. So monitoring from a security perspective the infrastructure where the AI lies, but also monitoring the interactions with the AI become very, very critical. And it puts compliance at risk when we are not able to protect that. So for me, the biggest ones are really operational and security, but also they have end up having impacts on from a financial perspective as well. When we deploy AI, there is an ROI. It's typically tied to saving, FTEs or manpower, or human power. And the reality is that we can have the best intentions in how we're designing these things, but we can't really prove the ROI until it actually gets deployed. When it gets deployed, it needs to be monitored and it needs to be maintained in relation to its performance and the expected ROI so that that can be triangulated for any baseline deviation to be communicated back to the organization, but also from an executive leadership perspective, needs to be sent back to the CFOs of the world. So when they're looking at the financial results that they were expecting when they signed off on a certain cost, it's aligned. And if it isn't, we're able to mitigate as quickly as possible. So monitoring has a huge impact on performance, the expected ROI against that performance, and cybersecurity. And then you've got, bias and ethical risks that are also associated to that. I mean, bias, if our data is not well structured when we put it in or has some form of bias, it can have reputational risk for us if, the results are always targeting a certain audience versus another. And from an ethical and legal perspective, if we are dealing with AI that is not monitored, what ends up happening is that in the event of some type of breach or some type of attack or some type of compliance fine that we face, for example, for HIPAA, if somebody passed some PHI information through an LLM and it was discovered and it was exposed, an organization is subject to a fine. If you can't demonstrate what your posture was, what the security posture of your AI instance was at any given moment, it makes it very, very difficult to defend yourself, and you'll be subject to those fines or any types of litigation that comes up. So, they're all interrelated, but really, I think focusing on the technical performance absolutely key, and focusing on security, especially as it pertains to how the bots interact with the infrastructure and how they interact with potential attackers is very, very key to mitigate a lot of that. And we've always got to tie it back to ROI. If we can't tie it back to ROI, we can have the most successful implementation that can be turned off because the costs removal or the cost reassignment was not followed up with. And I've seen projects get turned down just because of the fact that it wasn't being communicated well back to the executive suite. And for those that joined a little bit late, I just wanted to quickly state that I'm just going through this. I know we've asked for 30 minutes of your time. This is really us trying to share some lessons learned, best practices, some of the risks we're seeing out there as it pertains to AI. And so thank you for joining. I'm just trying to get us through here so that we can make best of use of your time. And hopefully, if we're lucky, we can have a bit of time left for Q&A at the end. So with all this comes a need for AI governance. Governance is multifaceted. Yes, it's policy, process, procedures. It's ensuring that you have a bidirectional flow of communication to ensure that what you do in one place gets done at the other. What you learn here gets applied somewhere else. It's also about ensuring accountability and responsibility. So, who is accountable for AI in an organization? Who is accountable for the result of AI? Who is accountable for the function that we're actually replacing? All of that becomes a web, if you will, that needs to be well governed and well managed. If we don't have proper governance structure around all of our AI implementation, what we'll end up having is we'll have a bunch of finger pointing, no one really owning things, and then we'll have efficiency issues when they fail. So it helps us ensure that there's accountability, that we're managing risk, especially as it pertains to compliance. If we're an organization that needs to be CMMC, we need to adhere to NIST, for example. It's important that whatever AI gets deployed conforms to that, is able to demonstrate its compliance from an auditability perspective, right? And is able to deal with changes as new regulations come up as well. So you need to be able to quickly identify what needs to be changed and how to go about changing it. And I highlighted it here because the operational AI governance I think is very, very, very important. We need to be able to have proper policy in place, but the policy needs to shift. It can't just be a people-focused policy or a systems-focused policy. There needs to be an AI and digital policy in place to help ensure that we're able to bridge, because it becomes, in essence, a worker that is subsidized out to different business units, and you need to have a proper policy in place to be able to regulate and govern that. And monitoring and maintenance are key when we're talking about operational AI governance. Because if we are not monitoring, then we put the delivery at risk, right? But we also expose ourselves from a compliance and cyber perspective, and it's a huge risk. There are a lot of solutions out there today that are focusing on deploying AI. That's one thing. Then you've got others that specialize in monitoring AI, and that's great. It's important that it gets done. But the issue that I've come across with those organizations or those tools is they are not experts in cybersecurity. And so they're AI experts, they're developers, they're analysts, they're people that have that expertise, but not the cyber expertise. And then you've got others that have cybersecurity expertise, which is great, but they're not AI developers. They're not people that have a true understanding of AI. So they simply focus on compliance, and they'll focus on the infrastructure where the AI sits, and they just leverage it as a tool as opposed to thinking of it as an extended FTE, and thinking of all the nuances within that. And so you end up having these area of experts that focus maybe on their portion of the AI that's deployed, but you don't have an overarching one that's looking at things from a cyber infrastructure perspective. Compliance is looking at things from a cyber risk perspective. If there's any type of intrusion or any type of potential attack interacting with the AI, they're not necessarily looking at that. And if there were, they wouldn't necessarily know where to look, and it's because they don't have that expertise. And so you really need to have, I think, something that's overarching, that is able to give us that benefit. So real quick, I know I said wouldn't be salesy, so I'm just showing it. We do have a platform. It can be any platform, to be honest with you. Happens to be our platform, and so I have a lot of expertise in this one. And so I felt very comfortable about talking through what it does to help address. This is just so you understand what's in the art of the possible. And it's really take it from a communication perspective. It's really coming from a good place where I'm really trying to share some insights. When we are talking monitoring, looking at things from being able to monitor the AI that's deployed for performance is very key. So in our Neural Edge, we have different types of AI that we interact with, whether it's RPA, LLMs, some natural language, or even if we've developed Python, code or scripts that are out there, we're able to monitor them from a performance perspective. You also have to be able to emulate and simulate, especially when you start thinking of things. I always start thinking of how do we take quantum into the business world. And so, you start thinking of things like superposition, right? Having something in two states at once. That's very important. And when you're simulating, to be able to simulate both an operation being successful and failing at the same time means that if and when it does fail, you're going to be able to identify it and come up with a solution or a proposed solution a lot faster. So simulation at scale is very, very important to be able to do. And then there's the security portion. So we have a security layer within there that interacts with the AI. We have an AI firewall that looks at what's interacting with the AI from an infrastructure perspective. But then we're also looking at the cloud security posture management where that AI may sit. If there are changes in the infrastructure, if Amazon releases a new version and an update and they've turned something on or off or a new feature, it's important that we're able to identify that quickly so that we can update the infrastructure from an AI point of view as well. And having a large language model integration that allows for us to be able to integrate with the the portions of AI that are a lot more cognitive so that we can understand if something is trying to interact with it to bring it down is absolutely key. So we underpin all of our performance monitoring with the security monitoring portion. And so this is just a view of how we interact with it at Evolving AI. So brings us to the end. I'm hoping maybe we have a couple questions. I'd love to field them if we can't get through them on this call, or if you'd prefer just to have a one-on-one, you can you can contact us. Really, the key message, I guess, if you will, in what I was trying to convey in the webinar is that AI, properly managing AI goes beyond the initial deployment. That's where it just starts. Deploying it is one thing, and it's a challenge to get there, but it starts once you deploy it because that's where you get married and and you live together for some time. And so you've got to make it work, and you've got to figure out how to not make it fail. There are solutions like the Neural Edge that offer solutions to this challenge as it pertains to monitoring and all of the compliance issues that you've got. And it just, I'd like for us to open discussion. Like I said, if not here, we can have, glad to get on a call, or even if it's to exchange through email or through LinkedIn, I'm all for it. So with that, I tried to keep us to 25 minutes, which isn't bad, I think, so we can have 5 minutes for discussion. So if anybody has anything, I'd love to interact.
Got a question for you.
Hey, Trey.
Have you seen any kind of, I don't know if it's eval, I don't know, eval scoring method that's used to enforce contract agreements or anything like that? So any scoring methods on qualities of responses, right?
Mhm.
And that
Yep.
could be something enforceable over time with model drift as well.
Correct. Correct. And it's also important. So when we take on an engagement with something like that, the data is very, very important, right? So especially when it comes to contracts, a lot of contracts are, if they're federal or if it's a local contract or for enterprise agreements within a country or another, I think the bias is really, really important there. And so the data with which we build the machine learning, leveraging LLM is very, very key to ensure that we have unbiased data, number one. And then as you start deploying it and using it, it's very important not only to baseline, but to increase off of your baseline. And so for me, monitoring like that means that you deploy it, you baseline it against what you think it should be doing, or and see how it performs that, bring it to there, but then it's got to be tweaked and enhanced because there's a lot of complexity when it comes to things like contracts, just because of the different people in the different regions and the different levels of society, if you will, that we're dealing with.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Good question. Thank you. Anyone else? Troy was the first one to join. Caught me when I was setting everything up.
Sorry about that. I got out
No,
late.
that's fantastic. Absolutely fine. All right. So if no one has any other questions, what I'll do is I'll close the webinar. I will invite you to communicate with us if you've got something. We will gladly interact with you whenever is convenient for you. If it's, just to talk about monitoring or talking about different AI deployments or the approach or process optimization, glad to talk through any of that.
Hey, Vincent, just a quick question, right? Is this material going to be available? Are you going to
Uh,
send this out or?
well, what we're gonna do is we'll send the recording out. So we're gonna post the
Oh,
recording of this so that you'll have access to it. But if you'd like, I can get this PDF and post it on our page, our LinkedIn, and send it out.
yeah, my organization's at the at the very nascent stage, right? And some of the things that you covered, we don't necessarily always take into consideration. So it's good to kind of have a mental checklist start to get formulated. That'd be helpful.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad to help, Richard.
Cheers.
All right, cheers. Well, all right. I thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And we plan to have a couple of these. So, try to hit different topics. I don't want to inundate everybody, but my promise is I'll try to keep them brief, little 30 minutes here and there, and communicate it afterwards. Glad to receive any feedback, questions, comments, anything you want to send our way. We're here. Thank you so much, everybody.